The taxi stand. It was in the novel. It is placed right behind the foyer on Plum Street. And there is no taxi stand there now, and quite honestly, this is a work in progress. I am still researching things. I've been working on this thing for 3 or 4 years and still digging up little bitty tidbits and things. I'm looking in now, one of the things I'm trying to find out is where were all the taxis in Robinson? There were several of them at various times, and where were they? Now, Edith, her father works at the chemical plant, and they live in a subdivision that was built near it. It has east-west streets, based on the descriptions, and they're rather short streets, and they have identical rows of bungalow houses on them, and they're named after Roosevelt and Hull. In Robinson, we have a neighborhood down by the Marathon Oil Refinery with east-west streets. There are 3 of them, though, and they are named Orlando, Tampa, and Clearwater. But the types of houses, the location, it just kind of fits. Edith is out taking a walk at one point here, and she's walking down East Werns Avenue, which is the main east-west street in Parkman, and it has lots of fine homes on it. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was visiting with my mother, and we were talking about the old town of Robinson and what it was like. And she got to talking about East Main Street and how the trees came out over the entire street and just formed a canopy. And these huge homes that were along East Main. And some of them still survive. Now, the home where Jim's father was born would have been the next house over right here, but it was torn down many years ago. So, with all that said, if you sit down and draw a map of Parkman, we kind of come up with this. Now, I put Frank's jewelry store over here, even though it may have been over here. I think that's kind of a, it's based on Brown's Jewelry Store, which was over here next to the foyer, or excuse me, the lobby, or wait a minute, which town am I in now? Anyway. The bank is up here, the Woodworth Hotel is here. There's Dave's room. Here's the businesses that are all discussed. This is the town square looking north up into here, so we get the railroad tracks and Smitty's and all that. Here's a real town. It's very, very similar. He just turned this part upside down. He just kind of rotated the town around 180 degrees and kept the town square as kind of the hub so it didn't turn. There's just a tremendous amount of similarity to it. We've got the lobby here instead of the foyer. There was an Olds department store here. Now, this is another reason why and this is just my opinion, why I think the Olds department store might have been the site of Frank's jewelry store if these things actually existed. There is, on pages 235 and 236, he talks about how Frank's wife, her father had owned the store before Frank took it over. And it was in the book, it was a, quote, cheap notion store, then in danger of being run out of business by Woolworths. In the novel, it says that, Frank took this thing over when it was a notion store. Well, Oles's wasn't exactly a notion store, but it kind of fits that bill. And the Hub men's store was right next to it. So that part of the geography kind of fits. You know, personally, I really think it was Brown's over here. Now, very quickly, let's look at the surrounding communities and some of the other things. He makes a lot of references in the novel to the bypass, the Route 40 bypass. It's going to go around Parkman on the north side. He's sure of it. He's positive. And if a guy owned some land out there and it was in the right place, he could make some money off of the right-of-way sales to the state. And we're going to have this major bypass and Route 1 intersecting. Man, if you built some businesses there, you could have your block. And Frank talks about that, standing there looking at this intersection thinking, boy, when this is done, well, as most of you probably realize, Route 40, the new 40 goes right up like this around Marshall. Here's the old 40, and there's the intersection we're talking about. This is what it looks like today. There are a lot of businesses in that area right now, today, just like like Jones predicted. Another little interesting thing here, another little play on words that he did. In the book, he's trying to acquire some more ground before the highway is sited, before work begins. There's some political wheeling and dealing going on, some contacts being made with politicians who have names that were extremely similar to the real politicians. Anyway, back this direction in the photo, in real life there was farm ground owned by a gentleman named Clyde Knowles. And in the book, there is some farmland in that area in the book, owned by a guy named Lloyd Monts. If you know your French, a mont is a mountain or a mound. And what is a knoll? It's a hill. Another little cute play that he did there, play on the words. There's a couple of references to a little town near Parkman called New Lebanon. And Dave's old girlfriend still lives down at New Lebanon. And it was a country community 10 miles south of Parkman by a gravel road. Well, it's not quite 10 miles down to a little town called New Hebron. Hebron, Lebanon. Okay. Hebron is a city in north of Jerusalem. Lebanon is north of Jerusalem. Okay, or north of Israel. Excuse me. West Lancaster, the bus driver that brought Dave to town, he was born in West Lancaster. It's about 15 miles from Parkman. It's a muddy little community on the banks of the river. Used to have a ferry. It's the only place in the county that has hard liquor. They got 5 buildings on the riverbank. 4 of them are bars, and 1 of them is a grocery store. It's right up Route 1. You go about 8 miles, and you turn east on a gravel road, and you drive until you hit the river. If you hit the river, you went too far. You need to back up and go into the bar.